What would women dislike most if they became men? Story 1. Constantly worrying about not looking like a creep. Seriously, crap is exhausting. I'm a 5 feet 10 inches, 225 pounds, muscular black dude. I know well that I'm probably the last person a woman, or anyone for that matter, wants to see walking behind them while they are alone at night. I work in retail too, so there's times where I will walk around the store just to avoid walking behind women just to make them feel better. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that women aren't justified for being wary. I completely understand why they might feel that way, but it just sucks constantly trying to make sure I don't accidentally look like a creep. Story 2. I'm 6 feet 1 inch, 265 pounds, brown, bald. No one has sat next to me on a bus in years. A child refused to sit next to me on a flight once and threw a tantrum about it. I ignored her the entire time. But oof, that hurt. I cried watching Coco. Recently, a crying lost child came up to me at the store and grabbed onto my leg. Before I could even react to this, the mother came around the aisle and screamed at me, "Leave my baby alone," as if I'd done something. The looks I got from the other shoppers, I genuinely feared a vigilante mob awaiting me as I left for literally nothing. People are harsh. Story 3. I knew someone who's first aid trained that got approached by a screaming child, grabbing at his leg, crying for him to help his mom, who was sat in the car having a seizure. Luckily, she pulled the car over safely to avoid a major accident. So instead, before getting to the child's mother to help, he had to now calm down and explain to the 3 ladies who stormed out of the hairdressers that had confronted him. Edit, I personally have had multiple first aid courses over the past 7 years due to my line of work and due to certain modern day social stigmas. With some people, I'd just prefer to phone an ambulance and not risk touching them. Story 4. My birthday was the other day. I realized I hadn't gotten a cake, a hug, or made to feel special in over 10 years. It's okay. I don't like being a burden or anything, so it's no big deal. Edit. Seriously, maybe the internet isn't so bad after all. Making me all emotional. I appreciate the kind gestures and words so much. I want to clarify that loneliness isn't a man issue, but a human issue. I just wanted to tell you about my experience. I appreciate your stories, and it really does help to not feel so alone for once. Thank you all again. I wish you all the best. Story 5. The violently crippling depression that you can't tell anyone about without risking making it worse, because men's mental health is still a joke to a disgusting amount of people. I told people for the first time this year in my 30s that life was hard and I was getting depressed. The most I got from anyone was, "It will get better, I'm sure." No visit, no phone call, nothing from friends or family. I even out of curiosity said I might just throw a toaster in the bath for fun. Not a single reaction. One of the many reasons my moms are gonna end up alone in a home. And people ask why men don't reach out. Story 6. You're screwed if a woman accuses you of some violation. Happened to me at work. I work mostly with women, so everyone turned away without telling me what happened. People didn't want to work with me, were saying they're scared of me, etc. Turns out some old lady said I violated her physically on our night shift. Why did she say that? No idea. Maybe a bad dream. Maybe she's just a bitch. Thing is, I'm gay and she didn't know that, so it all turned against her, but if I didn't have this go out of a jail card, my life would have been ruined. Oh, in case you're wondering, she faced 0 consequences. Story 7. I knew a man who was dating a woman for a long time. One day, they got into an argument over money and the woman hit herself with a pipe and said he was beating her. The court took her side, and he went to jail. She got a bunch of his money as compensation. 3 years later, a friend of the woman said that she had lied about the beating and the guy's name was cleared. Even though his name was cleared, no one would hire him for a long time. Eventually, a Catholic high school with a second chance policy took him in as an art teacher. To this day, he was the best art teacher I've ever had. Story 8. 0 emotional support and a universal expectation that you'll suck it up and do your duty like a good little stoic. The cultural subtext is that males are disposable units of labor. Also, white guys are the last acceptable target for mockery if someone is going to be an incompetent, clueless doofus in a commercial, etc. It's a middle-aged white dude. You will be punished if you seem to care about this. Story 9. We have no allies in public, every man for himself. Seeing people cross the street if they see you coming the other way. Not having friendships with any heart-to-heart conversations. Expect your existence to be ignored. People are uncomfortable with you interacting or being near their kids. Can't chill at the park and innocently watch the playground. Dads of children at the playground are viewed as suspicious too. Knowing you're seen as a potential predator until proven otherwise. You're guilty until proven innocent by the public regarding sexual incidents. Society generally not caring about your emotional or physical health. An example is that 33,000 men die from prostate cancer and 42,000 women die from breast cancer. How much public support do you see to fight prostate cancer? Story 10. The reality that your only value in the world is in what you provide, not who you are. Chris Rock said it perfectly: only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. I know a lot of women that say that isn't the truth, but when we lose a job or get injured, a man can immediately feel it. It isn't in our head. When we stop being able to work around the house or a paycheck stops coming in for 1 minute, you can feel the disdain and avarice in the way everyone relates to you. I think the stark realization it would bring if a woman felt this for literally a split second would be altering for them. Story 11. How often you volunteer for stuff. How much people look to you for solutions and then immediately discredit you. How you aren't supposed to hold any major emotions other than happy and sad, and never for longer than a few minutes. How we're expected to be the breadwinners and still fight for women's equality when women are pushing us out of the workplace. How our wants and needs don't matter when a woman wants otherwise. How we can't even interact with children in public without being labeled as a creep or pedo. Most importantly, how men are expected to deal with it regarding life as a whole. Men, especially white men, are being demonized in the West, and we're meant to just take it on the chin and continue going like nothing is wrong. Society hates us, but we know that society depends on us to function, so we continue. Story 12. As a trans man, the only thing that has really bothered me about being perceived as a man, though it's obviously still a net positive for me, is that casual physical touch with friends and family isn't socially accepted the way it is for women. When I was still presenting female, it was the norm to hold hands with your friends, lean on them when standing around, or even just cuddle. Men don't really get to do that. Story 13. You no longer get to just vent. Or you can do it, but it's pointless and makes you feel worse, not better. In general, of course, there are exceptions and special cases to all of this. Ladies, imagine you're at your lowest. You have a problem that you just don't know how you are going to fix. Even if you talk to someone just to vent, chances are good someone is going to offer to help in some way. When you're a man and you do that, you just spend 30 minutes talking about a problem, and at the end of the problem is still there and 100% still yours to fix. Nothing has changed. I honestly think for a lot of women that would be the biggest thing. If a woman just talks about a problem long enough, even if they aren't looking for help, the problem will get better. I honestly think a lot of women just don't get that just doesn't work if you're a guy. Story 14. I think that the emotional landscape for men is very different than it is for women. I think men are socialized to be unemotional, what bell hooks called psychic self-mutilation. I think men are also extremely alienated from other humans and affection. For women, I get the feeling attention is a spigot you can't turn off, and for men it's a spigot you can't turn on. For a lot of complex reasons, I think the male experience is extremely isolating and hostile for all but a privileged few in patriarchal culture. I've heard anecdotes from FTM trans folks that it's a culture shock. Story 15. The distrust society gives you around women and children, the body hair, the facial hair, the ass hair, the constant sweat and bad smell, the expectations of manual labor regardless of what you do for work. The lack of choices for fashion, hearing what men actually say about women when no women are around, the rampant toxic masculinity, if you put on weight it just all goes to the belly, going bald, always being hot temperature wise, being told to man up anytime you were upset about anything. Being made fun of or judged if you cry, not being able to cry even if you want to, the deep voice. I might be biased on these things seeing as I'm a trans woman, so I'm just listing things I despised pre-transition. Men who lives alone and then had a woman move into your place. What are some examples of a woman's touch that she added? Story 1. Worked on a ship when a female cook steward started working there. Before the crew were all male. Within a couple of days, the mess and galley were transformed. Tablecloths, curtains, coasters, it was really all new. The galley became a water cooler kind of place where you always could go to have a chat and get a snack. The galley always smelled of cooking and she was listening to her radio. It was a real game changer from the former grumpy guy and sterile setting. Our skipper loved it. Story 2. I came home once from work. She'd made an awesome dinner. Put cut up strawberries in the salad. Strawberries, guys. It was game over. Been married 9 years now and she's still doing everything on a strawberries in the salad level. I love that this was one of the moments you were like, dank, I gotta marry this one, hope something like this happens to me cause that's so adorable, ha ha ha. Story 3. Before my wife moved in, girlfriend at that time, I lived with a friend and our flat looked pretty bad, more like a university student flat than anything else. Zero decorations, old furniture from the landlord, horrible cream color walls, etc. Since we were always at work and barely home, it was not a problem for us. Living abroad, I always considered it a temporary place and didn't have much attachment to it, so didn't want to spend time and money to improve the space. Once she moved in, we slowly started making it into a real home. We painted the walls, bought furniture, plants, hung some photos, bought a cat, etc. It made such a huge difference and improved our quality of life, to be honest. Story 4. I'm an architect. Since I live abroad, I was reluctant to spend money on a house that is not mine and always saw it as a temporary place, so was lazy about any upgrades. Living with someone you love changes your perspective and makes you want to make a bigger effort. Something as simple as having photos of family on the wall, a scent candle, or a few flowers can make a huge difference. You learn to appreciate those small things. A good woman will make you better in every way and improve your life. A home is just one of those ways. Story 5. Tiny ankle socks everywhere. We broke up 7 years ago, and I still occasionally find one in some forgotten corner of the house. Asterisk edit to add, for those saying I haven't deep cleaned, some explanation. After she moved out, I gave away or sold most of my things to get a fresh start, and I realized I only need about half the house. The bedrooms and family room in the basement are basically just storage that I literally might go into twice a year, and I haven't been into one of the bedrooms in about 3 years. For the rooms I do go into, I'll sometimes come across these tiny socks mistakenly got thrown into a tote with something I'm actually after. Story 6. So, she didn't move in, but we moved in together to a house I bought. Everything is ultimately more pleasant. Rooms are thoughtfully designed. The furniture is high quality and comfortable. The dishes look good. It's a pleasure to be in my office. My things are organized. Everything has a place. If I can't find it, I check the place and it's there. Plus also I got a new cat friend, or honestly, after a week, a potential cat friend. Story 7. I once dated this guy that lived by himself. His TV was placed on a random folding table that was leaned up against the wall. There was a towel under the TV, and I'm assuming there was an anti-slip feature for the TV. There was no mount on the wall and the TV did not have a stand. It was interesting. My current partner had a huge clock in his kitchen that was dead for 5+ years. I replaced the battery that he already had extras of. His parents now thank me every time they come over. Story 8. It was bare, terrible feng shui, random clutter, no decorations, no plants, dusty, bed mostly unmade. I had a massive wraparound couch in my bedroom that I salvaged from the street, which was quickly relocated. Endless candles. New cooking utensils I'd never seen before in my life and didn't know how to use. Toilet roll that used to last me years now lasts months. I eat more healthily, drink less, and go on nice trips more. Generally massive improvements with minor drawbacks. 9 out of 10 recommend. Story 9. I work in a male-dominated industry, and in a smaller office the women were the reason for the kitchen being clean, there being cake and cookies on birthdays or just for fun, 14 picnics and fun activities being had. And finally bring on a team with a 50-50 gender ratio, the men even picked up on some of it, especially in terms of emotional question compliments on a haircut, checking in when someone seemed down, a little 5 to 7 or gift when someone achieved something or had a baby. My own little women's team were so close, none of us work together anymore, but we still talk all the time, we'd compliment each other, tell each other we love them, always help one out. Emotional labor of women in companies is huge. Story 10. I think for me the biggest difference is having a more well-stuffed fridge, and just in general having more fresh food and a more varied and healthy diet compared to when single. When living alone, I just mostly stocked up on the bare minimum when it came to food, and could have the same type of meal for several days in a row. I have actually always been very much into decorating and flowers and such, perhaps more so than my partner, so that part didn't really change much. Story 11. So we did the reverse. I moved into hers. For context, I am a full-blown adult. I've lived on my own for 17 years. I took great pride throughout my late 20s and into my 30s of not having a boy house. I kept it clean, I decorated. For the most part, the soap was refilled. A week after moving in, I learned the difference between a house and a home. Everything, and I mean everything, has its place. The inconvenience of the conveniences brought on from living in an adult home is exhausting. Hang this up, move that there, time to rearrange the bins, recycle this, throw out that, about to take a nap? Not with the grass like that we aren't. Going to sit down? Why don't we organize the dog toys by playing with the most toys? I will say this though. I've lived a life where I answered to no one, was responsible to no one, and did what I pleased. It's quite lonely. I'll take getting yipped about not washing the knives the right way any day. Story 12. I wish my husband viewed the little touches I add as positive/homey. He always gives me grief about stuff we don't need. Right now the battle is over a dresser. He refuses to buy one even though we can afford it because he doesn't need it and would rather keep his clothes in plastic Sterilite drawers. He doesn't have any concept of buying stuff to make a home more comfy and attractive. Story 13. 95% of what is in the house was brought in by her. I had a fully functional household with every necessary item, but the house was basically empty. A place for everything and everything in its place. Now we have every necessary item at least twice. 2 toasters. Cooking utensils that have only been used once. And the amount of clothing. And why do we need 10 bottles of shampoo and conditioner in the shower? 5 of them are almost, but not quite empty. What use do we have for 3 hairdryers? I could go on. Story 14. My roommate's kinda sorta LDGF would stay with us for weeks at a time, and she'd always buy us household stuff that stinky boys and bachelors neglect. Like decorative tissue boxes and foam rubber cozies for the remote, stuff like that. And holiday decor. I made sure to always thank her for beautifying our home. My sister who lives with us now is similar, but she's more into the organizers and containers decluttering things. Story 15. My wife still tells the story. We've been together for 6 years. She said that when she first saw my place she immediately had a frat boy or treehouse vibe to it. Bare room, non-matching furniture. Nothing on the wall. She added pictures on the wall, made the balcony nicer, and organized my kitchen so everything is easily accessible. When we moved into our house, she organized everything. Things did change a little after living in it for a year. She did realize how I wanted my kitchen, primary cook. I ended up putting stuff where I wanted it, so she made changes. I absolutely love our house now. We have friends come and hang out at least twice a month. We've cooked and entertained for as many as 15 people, and it turned out great. Highly recommend a woman's touch to your treehouse/prison cell decor. What are signs a woman hasn't matured? Story 1. Not communicating when you do or don't want something and then holding resentments about it later. Edit. To people lamenting that they are like this, I've been through this journey myself and know how deep-rooted this behavior is. Still working on it myself, but feel free to DM to chat about some tips and strategies. Story 2. She's always going on about cutting out all the drama and toxicity from her life. Hint, she's the drama and toxicity. I had to end a friendship because she was like this. In the last 7 years of knowing her, I have seen her end a dozen friendships and get into a dozen complications at work regarding her getting into fights with her colleagues, and, from her POV, she was never wrong. The other girls were always jealous of her, didn't appreciate her, were bad friends, etc. When we ended our friendship, I have never had to verbally end a friendship in my life until her. She pointed out all of my flaws, which I apologized for. And when I pointed out her issues and how they negatively affected me, she didn't apologize one time and instead gaslighted me. Best thing I ever did was to walk away from that. Story 3. Many of my mom's friends compete with their own daughters. Talent, success, male affection. It's all disgusting. I see how their mother's parenting affects them and have set a template how they treat their nieces. Another friend of mine was a locally famous karaoke singer. She couldn't translate her gift to a full-time gig, but she worked tirelessly to send her daughter to a conservatory. Equally gifted. A few years ago we went to karaoke. Daughter, classically trained, walks on stage and starts belting bluesy Joss Stone. Beautiful, smooth, and tender. Crowd just blew away. Up walks mom. Grabs the mic and starts to rock out Melissa Etheridge. She knew the crowd and knew how to get them on their feet. It was all the validation she needed. Story 4. Putting others down for fun. One of my friends started dating a girl and he brought her to dinner with us. She attached herself to me because I was the only girl in the group. She spent the entire night commenting negatively on the clothes and appearance of every single person we passed and thinking she was so clever for it. Sorry, but I'm in my 30s and don't feel like hanging out with someone who has the mentality of a middle schooler. Story 5. It's such a sign of where someone is mentally. I was leaving my office job one day and another girl asked me where I was going. I said to play Dungeons and Dragons with some friends, and she snickered and tried to make me feel embarrassed by asking a lot of leading questions. My coworkers all know and respect me even if we don't share the same hobbies. The girl deflated when she realized no one else was going to mock me for my interests. It was super awkward and everyone else just told me to have fun. That girl switched jobs a few months later due to other team differences, but I never really trusted her after that. I'm grateful my team isn't High School 2.0 because I know some offices have that sort of culture. Story 6. Making unnecessary drama and stating you don't like drama. Then, you're probably toxic and your entire group of friends are just like you. You never left high school mentally. My mom works at a casino as a cleaning attendant. She's the youngest one in that group. The other hags are 50 to 70 years old. They talking about who's cheating on who and all sorts of drama over some crap. My mom signed up my dad to work with her since he quit his other job, so when he joined and would always sit next to my mom, everyone gossiped saying that my mom was cheating on my dad. When that was my dad. People gotta chill. Story 7. A lot of people like this are lacking so much self-awareness that they don't even realize they're the ones creating drama. They legitimately think they live in a world where everyone is out to get them, completely oblivious to the fact that the only common denominator in all of the oh-so-terrible situations they end up in is them. It's like the emotional equivalent of someone pointing a gun at their own head and then running around screaming that someone's trying to shoot them. Story 8. Lack of empathy and listening skills. thinking you are less of a man for being emotionally vulnerable and expressing your feelings, and later weaponizing these insecurities. Me and my lady, well, probably ex by now, just had a big fight, and she did this exact thing. Using the things that I'm most susceptible to be hurt by to cause true damage. You just don't do that. Wish I could upvote this to the highest cloud on the internet. Story 9. When they do constant tests to see how you will react. Anyone who wants you to fight for them isn't worth it. Some woman who was mad at my wife threatened to sleep with me in revenge. A steal your man thing. My wife laughed in her face and said, "Good luck with that." I know it's my wife's view that a man who can be stolen was never worth keeping. As far as I know, the woman never actually made the attempt. I don't know if she made peace with my wife getting the promotion she wanted. Story 10. Her playing the victim in every scenario. Seriously though, I cannot think of a single time where my ex took any responsibility for things going wrong in her life or in other people's lives as a result of her actions. Literally not one single time. It wasn't until a few years later that I realized she never admitted to anything being her fault. The blame was always on someone or something else. Story 11. A big one for me are women who assume they're right in every argument and refuse to acknowledge the other person's point of view, even when proven wrong. I dated a girl like this. She accused me of something, we got in a fight, I objectively proved her wrong, and she pulled the "I'm just going to take off my shirt and see if you're still angry" thing. No, I don't want to make love. I want you to admit you were in the wrong, apologize, acknowledge you understand why it made me upset, and then maybe make love. Story 12. Thinks she shouldn't have to respect your boundaries because she's a woman. My buddy used to see a woman that would deliberately hit men because she expected to never be hit back. Boy, was she surprised one day when she hit a guy and he clocked her right back. Of course, she then expected my friend to fight the guy and was offended when he told her that she deserved it for smacking him over something trivial. They didn't last very long. She tried the same crap with my sister's boyfriend and then was shocked when my sister showed her the floor. Apparently, it also didn't occur to her that other women could also hit her. Story 13. Doesn't communicate feelings while expecting me to magically know how she's feeling. Keeps quiet about misunderstandings and doesn't even give me the chance to resolve it, so I keep doing it and it eventually becomes the reason why she ghosts me. I met my best friend last August, and it's going really well because she's actually capable of telling me the moment I say or do something she didn't like, so I'm able to immediately apologize and change my behavior. Story 14. When they do not take responsibility for their financial well-being, e.g. they rely on parents, boyfriends, credit cards, etc., and plan on taking it on. I'm not talking about people who are living paycheck to paycheck or have other challenges, parents who make a decision that one partner will bow out of work to care for children, or people who need government assistance due to the high cost of childcare, healthcare, and housing. Specifically, women who make no future plans for their financial security because they anticipate marrying well. Story 15. Tells to you that she loves you on the first date. 3 months later, she's ghosting you for 3 days and replying on the 4th day when you ask what is going on, saying family drama, sorry for ignoring you. And you discover that she is cheating on you when her new boyfriend texts you, stop talking to her or I will beat the crap out of you. 5 minutes after, she blames the ghosting on family drama. She is 39 years old and this was the day after Christmas. Women of Reddit, what is the hardest part of being a woman? Story 1. Everything related to our reproductive system. Periods, hormonal cycles, contraceptives, pregnancy. Don't get me wrong, I love being a woman and I want to be a mother. I don't think those things are bad, but they're definitely very hard. My C-section still burns a year later and everyone thinks I'm fine cause I don't mention it, because then mentioning it prompts them to tell you to go to the hospital, but it's hard just to do things. Story 2. On my heaviest day, I had to use a public park bathroom. There was no running water, toilet paper basically disintegrated in my hands, and it's like the shinning trying to mop up all the blood. My fiance had to hold a water bottle out for me to clean my hands properly. Also, there was no soap or sanitizer. That's what being a woman is like. Story 3. I have a lot, but I would say endometriosis and PCOS. And the fact that these conditions are not taken seriously. I have endometriosis, and it took me 4 years to get an actual diagnosis and treatment that worked. Before, when I said, yeah, my cramps hurt so bad that I can't sleep and it feels like I have appendicitis, they would just say, oh yeah, that's normal, here's ibuprofen. It is so normalized for women to just deal with pain that they didn't follow up. I finally got a doctor that took me seriously, and he coached me on my best options and made sure to screen me for PCOS too in case it was that. Story 4. When doctors brush you off as having anxiety. My mom's doctor brushed off her symptoms for 9 months with "it's just anxiety" before I forced her to go to a specialist. She died of bowel cancer 11 months later. Had the first doctor taken her seriously, she would have had a chance to survive. She was 55. Story 5. For me, it's the combination of all the little things that build up. They're all connected. But if I had to pick only one, it's the final boss of nobody ever believing you about anything. I am always questioned on everything, even things that I am literally an expert in, by people who have absolutely no credentials. And I'm questioned on the reality of the other things I mentioned before. Could my chronic pain actually be that bad? Am I sure that my ex was taking advantage of me? Everyone wants to play devil's advocate when the devil is doing a fine job advocating for himself. Story 6. Never really being taken seriously for anything, be it medical issues, financial, anything really. I'm tired of being seen as this adorable little thing that needs to be coddled and protected, and not a traumatized person who is just trying to get by and live. Having to bring my partner or male friend to help me out because no one takes me seriously. Oh, and little to no bodily autonomy in some cases. I can write down more stuff that I hate about being a woman, but I'm tired and want to go play with my kittens now. Story 7. The weird sexism when women talk about their interests and hobbies when they're not the traditional woman hobbies. If a woman is working in a male-dominated industry, she's required to be one of the best, and mistakes are met with misogynistic "women can't do anything right" nonsense. She can't be just average like a man can. It's a weird double standard. Or if our woman has more masculine hobbies or interests and the men around her find out, most of the time they'll end up quizzing her to see if she's actually into it or faking. Story 8. If you're into female hobbies, people don't take them seriously. I've been sewing and making costumes my whole life. I majored in fashion, have made costumes for theaters, and taught fashion design. And some people are still like, "Oh, that cute sewing hobby of yours." The sheer amount of engineering info I have in my brain when it comes to building clothing, combined with the ridiculous amount of fashion history facts, would blow your mind. Story 9. Being an ugly woman. Conventionally attractive women get treated like absolute crap and get little respect, but us unattractive women get treated even worse. Zero respect at all. TBH, my personal favorite experience was getting a milkshake and a metal tub of Carmex thrown at me from a moving vehicle. Really felt respected as a human being that day. Story 10. You know what the worst thing is? That despite the societal pressure to maintain a full-time career, you also have to do the majority of housework and childcare, even though you're technically working the same amount of time as your partner. Women are expected to do the majority of care work in their families. They do most of the invisible labor, and they're expected to do it all at the cost of their well-being. On top of this, you're expected to have children, have to have a period, and also have to give birth. It's baloney. Story 11. Getting diagnosed with endometriosis. Every month or so I would get struck with debilitating nausea and constant vomiting, loose feeling in my hands and feet, and would end up collapsing because I couldn't walk. Took multiple ER trips before they figured it out. The doctor treated me like a drug addict and insisted I had cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome because I mentioned I smoked. It just so happened weed got legalized in my state within the month of my repeated visits. Incredibly demoralizing and humiliating experience. They got real sweet with me once they finally found the 7 cm long chocolate cyst eating away at one of my ovaries. Story 12. I'm always frustrated that breasts are so heavily sexualized. That is such a huge section of me that can't be remotely bumped into without someone feeling like they need to profusely apologize to me. Both women and men feel awful when they do. It's just skin. Story 13. Learning about all the extra sacrifices we have to make around reproduction due to the body we were born in, paying for period products, dealing with regular pain, scheduling birth control and gynecologist appointments, dealing with side effects, pregnancy, childbirth, nursing, etc. And then learning that there are political groups that don't think that's enough of a burden and want to make things even harder for us by taking away any semblance of autonomy we have over our bodies or reproduction. Story 14. Casual misogyny. It's almost easier to deal with the extreme misogynists like Andrew Tate than the subtle everyday crap that is done/said about or to us. Medical professionals dismiss us, communities of men online talking about us like we're a different species than them, being pitted against each other all the time by the media, stereotyping. Even our hobbies get crap on simply because we're women and things that we enjoy are seen as lesser. It's so insidious and it really wears you down. Story 15. Constant pressure to be a great girlfriend, wife, other, daughter, sister, friend, etc. Be thin but not too thin. Instead, we need to be healthy. Can't be fat, but a little meat on the bones is okay. Can't dress too sexy or you're a slut. Or if you are covered, then you're a prude. Be smart but not too smart, cause then you know it all. Pressure to keep a clean, happy home, but also have a career. Make sure our partners are satisfied so they don't cheat. What's the worst thing a woman has done on the first date? Story 1. I showed up to grab a drink and she was already blacked out. Chatted for 30 minutes and left. The next day she messaged me asking why I never showed. Tinder date and first impressions were seeing this girl noticeably sloshed. I didn't peace out when I saw the signs and the night ended up bar hopping/babysitting regardless. She did hit me up later on the week wondering if we messed that night. We didn't. Don't let temptation overrule common sense. Picking up a girl you don't really know but is practically offering all trust into you from the start, it isn't exciting or sexy as it sounds, because it can easily put you together in a mess you don't have control over. And you end up getting stuck being responsible with someone who is irresponsible. Ruins the whole date. Story 2. She referred to her 3 daughters as cunts in a conversation without me even knowing she had children. Yeah, cut that night short. Funny enough, she was the ex of coworker, and that created a whole new level of drama. Story 3. We had previously agreed on a restaurant time and to just do separate bills, to which I would offer to pick up hers at the end to be polite. I arrived on time and messaged that I was there. I got a reply stating she was already inside and seated. The server had just bought her another glass of wine and was walking away with an empty wine glass and a shot glass. The first words out of her mouth weren't even hello, they were "you're paying, right?" I don't have any money. I didn't breathe a word. I just turned around and left. Story 4. Brought a friend to dinner. Okay, sure, bring a buddy I suppose. But the friend wanted to sit at the table and not the bar so we could have some privacy. And they both thought I was going to pay for dinner for all of us and drinks. And the friend made it clear she was only there to cockblock because her friend liked to sleep with guys and she was there to prevent that. I kind of felt like I was being accused of a sex crime. I just looked them both in the eye, told me I ain't the one, and left. This was before we even got our drinks too. Story 5. This isn't terrible as much as it was very strange. I'm from upstate New York, she was from Florida. She had made several questionably accurate statements throughout the night, but I finally said something when she claimed lacrosse originated from Florida. It's pretty well established it came from the Iroquois tribes of western/central New York. She proceeded to open Wikipedia and read the entry while inserting Florida throughout in an attempt to prove her point. I dropped it but checked when I went home and she was just openly lying. Story 6. She called me racist for calling a black person George. The guy's name was George and he's a friend of mine. Both of us looked at each other. Turns out racists used to call black people George at one point. Either way, she refused to apologize or act like she made a mistake, so George asked me if I wanted to join his group. Only time I have ever ditched a first date. Story 7. She looked nothing like her photos, invited me back to her place, which looked it hadn't seen a cleaning product since it was built, did blowtorch dabs for 20 minutes before acting like it was time for me to take her to bed. I said I needed something from my car and left. She still texted the next day asking when date 2 would be. Story 8. Within 5 minutes she told me she just broke off an engagement. 10 minutes later she said she went out with a guy the previous week, hit it off with him, but then when he went to the bathroom she left the bar with another guy in a cab. Told me to buy her drinks. Said I'd be sitting at the table while she's in the bathroom. I look up 10 minutes later and she's talking to the bartender drinking. Asked her what's up. She said she didn't see me. I drank her beer and left. Texted her that I had a great time sarcastically and said she wanted to meet up again. Story 9. While out watching a movie, some guys came into the theater to sit down and the girl I went on a date got up and left without saying a word. Just left me sitting there alone in a theater because she didn't want some guy she liked to see she was out with me. Story 10. Mine was a meetup at a bar following some Tinder chats. She turns up considerably heavier than her pics. No issue, carry on the date and have a couple of drinks. She then proceeded, without my knowledge, to invite about 10 of her friends to the bar, and she's there holding my arm and cuddling in and trying to get kisses, etc., and acting like we've been dating for months. It was very awkward. I ended up making a getaway only after she demanded a kiss. Story 11. I don't have any total horror stories, but when I was away at school, like 2 hours away from home, I matched with a girl from my hometown when visiting my parents. We talked for a few days and she wanted to meet for dinner, but I had already gone back to school and it was the middle of the week. So I skipped an evening lecture to go see this girl and drove 2 hours in the dark and snow. Got to the restaurant and when I went to message her that I was there, I found she had deleted me off everything. I texted her, we didn't text often, but I had her number and got no response. Still have no idea why she did this, but she was well aware I was driving 2 hours to meet her. The last message she sent me was after I told her I was leaving, telling me to drive safe. Not sure what changed during the 2 hours I was in the car, but I never heard from her again. Needless to say, my parents got a surprise visit from me that night and I didn't feel like telling them why. Story 12. Went out with a girl to a concert/live band karaoke. I got there first and chilled with a drink. She acted like she didn't see me, then texted me to hurry up cause she was there. Then told me about every dude she hooked up that we passed at the concert. There were multiple. She got really drunk, made a fool out of herself on stage, drug me around all night and asked me to hang out with her in her car. Then she started crying because she didn't want to be alone with a stranger, but also didn't want to be alone, so could I please wait until her other male friend got there. She asked me to sit in the back because her friend always sits up front. I dipped out after that last one. Girl was a train wreck. Story 13. I am a mostly gay man. At some point in time after a bad breakup, I decided to explore a bit. There was this one girl that I liked and we talked for a bit before going out. I knew she had lost a kid to some crazy drama involving the father's family. She knew I was gay and this was new for me. She loved that crap for some odd reason. We went out. It goes well. We go back to my place. It gets hot. She says you don't have to use a condom. I'm on birth control. I'm like, I absolutely do. We start and she reaches down and pulls it off. I firmly assert that we need this, but I want to have your baby. Bruh, what the heck? Story 14. Matched with a girl on Tinder who invited me to her stand-up comedy routine and then proceeded to tell jokes about how disgusting the guys she meets on Tinder are. It was like something from a sitcom. They weren't even good jokes. She had no punchlines. One was just about a guy who had a strap in his profile pic and nothing after it, so I heckled her with a fine. I'll just change the picture and then left. Got a couple of laughs though. Story 15. She invited me to her place for food and drinks. I show up and she does not look like her Tinder pictures at all. Her place is disgusting with empty beer bottles and trash everywhere. She also had 3 dogs, 2 cats, a ferret, and 2 snakes. She chain-smoked cigarettes the whole time while trying to force beers down my throat. She told me all about how crap her life has been and how the cops are going to come take her away at any time. Apparently, she got a DUI driving 90+ mph hammered to go give her ex-boyfriend a BJ. I came up with the first excuse I could to get out of there. It was late at night and her place was far from my place, but close to my job, so I ended up sleeping in my car and heading to work the next day. Worst date ever, LOL. Men, what is something a woman would never understand? Story 1. I wanted an tall, elongated toilet when we remodeled our bathroom. She wanted a shorter round bowl. Trying to explain the need to wash my D every time I sit on the toilet because it rubs the inside of the bowl was futile. Story 2. How long compliments stick with us? We remember forever because we rarely get them. Edit. Thank you so much for all the awards and sharing your stories. Hopefully my comment encourages my fellow Redditors to give more compliments. I was extremely skinny in high school and got made fun of because of it and have been on and off working out for years, and during my last bout of working out I hit my highest weight ever. And one of my friends said I look really good and noticed I've put on weight, and that alone has kept me going for months. Story 3. Shrinkage. I would also like to expand on this. It's not just shrinkage. Guys don't have 2 sizes, soft and hard. Depending on what kind of underwear we're wearing, the temperature, how we're sitting, time of day, our mood, it can be soft and still look impressive like a shower, or, yes, like sometimes we don't even want to look at it. Boners also have 2 modes, so to speak. Regular hard and maximum over boner. Like it's too powerful for its own good. TLDR, a man's size is a spectrum. Just because you see him on a bad day is not indicative of what he's capable of. Story 4. People are afraid of me because I'm a big guy. I can give off an intimidating aura, so if I'm walking behind a woman, she is often looking over her shoulder every now and then. I try to make a show of tying my shoe or slowing down so she gets some more distance. Sometimes I'll cross the road. I know why they are afraid of me, and I don't blame them in the slightest. It just hurts sometimes is all. Story 5. When I take my toddler to the playground without my wife, I too would like to chat with the other adults. I feel like I am barely even tolerated, being around their children to make sure mine's okay and having good fun. We can talk about cooking, daycares. Just talk to me. I am not even wearing a trench coat and you don't know my Reddit name. Story 6. That when 2 men hang out, it's completely normal to not talk about important stuff or at all. My grandfather taught me how to fish when I was 5. I'm now over 30 and we still fish all the time. However, every single time we get back, my grandma will ask what we talked about, and my answer is always nothing. It's almost a running joke in my family to figure out what we talk about, and they don't understand that we literally don't talk about anything, we just fish. Also, I'm a woman and I would absolutely talk if Grandpa wanted to, but I think he just enjoys the quiet, so that's what we do. Story 7. How much we literally just don't care sometimes. I don't care what color the couch is. I don't care where the cabinet sits in the room. You're gonna make me move it regardless. Don't ask me where I want it because I don't want to move it in the first place. Just tell me where and I'll put it there for you. Story 8. You can feel emotionally vulnerable, but no one takes you seriously because you're a man. When I see women telling someone to man up, it makes me so angry. This drives me insane. I am doing my best to raise my son that feeling sad and vulnerable is completely normal for people, not just girls. He was having a really emotional day at school, so I pulled him out the rest of the day. He said he just felt like crying and didn't know why and couldn't stop it. I told him it's fine, all teenagers go through this, and to just cry it out. He said boys aren't supposed to be emotional, only girls. I corrected him and said everyone can feel emotional and it's perfectly normal and human to need to cry. I wish people would stop telling their sons that crying is for girls only and let these boys feel so they can grow into emotionally healthy men. Story 9. I'm a forensic nurse. I had a patient who came in after his ex hit him with her CAR. She had gang connections too. I was the ER nurse at the time and takes to him about the forensic exam. He agreed, and I called in the forensic nurse on duty. I could have done it, but I was staffing ER and we were busy. She was someone I had trained. When she called to report it and get info for the exam, the cop that came refused to take a report. She was newer and wasn't sure how to handle that. I went off on him. I called dispatch and asked for a supervisor to come. The supervisor did and made that other cop stay and watch. Broke my heart for him, but glad he witnessed someone believing in him. Story 10. Sometimes when a guy is interested in you, it's not because he wants to just get in your pants. Maybe he actually likes you. Shocker, I know. Conversely, if a guy doesn't like you, it is not always because there's another girl or there's something wrong with him. He may have opted to sort his life out first before participating in the clown show that is modern dating. Story 11. This is not totally exclusive to being a man, but the weight many men carry on a daily basis without ever saying anything about it is incredible. Even though my wife works, I feel ultimate responsibility to make sure my family is provided for. Add on top of that my wife's mental health struggles, and sometimes all the responsibility is crazy heavy. I don't really tell people that ever. Dads are often perceived as being bulletproof. From the few times I've talked to other dads about this, I think it's pretty common. Also, most women will never know what it feels like to have the physical ability to really hurt someone and having to be gentle to be sure it doesn't happen. Story 12. I work with kids in an athletic facility that is primarily gymnastics. I don't think a single one of the ladies has ever gotten a dirty look for working with little kids just because of who they are. I have also seen stories of fathers at the park with their kids having the cops called on them. I don't think women can ever understand what it's like to have it be the assumption that you're a creep if you're working with or playing with children. Story 13. The Nothing Box. Everybody's head is filled with different boxes, each containing some aspect of life, home, work, hobbies, etc. Men, specifically, are gifted with an extra box, one with absolutely nothing in it. It's where we go when we watch movies, play games, read books, etc. Given the chance, most men will go there every time given the opportunity. This is why we answer nothing when we're asked what we're thinking. And it's true. For a brief time, there's nothing going on upstairs, and it feels great. Story 14. What they consider mansplaining is actually a bonding ritual. We sit around and explain things to each other that we all know. Accepting these explanations and extending/correcting each other with technicalities is a demonstration of respect and a gesture of comforting acceptance to each other. Story 15. The fact that so many people, not just women either, just can't understand that raping males exist. Males do get taped and it's either ha, you're lucky, I know what I'm wishing for on my birthday, or you enjoyed it. You're a man. And it's so annoying. And the fact that women can get away with so much more than men can. An example was all the ways back in first grade. A girl walks up to me and literally gut punches me. The teacher goes, "Don't do that again." And they leave. I accidentally lightly hit her in the hallway and she started yelling at me, and when I get home it turns out the teacher called my parents because I'd assaulted my classmate and my parents were fuming at me. End rant here. Woman of Reddit, what is your, I am the client not my husband, stop ignoring me story? Story 1. My scenario doesn't quite fit the bill, but I'm a female business owner with a male business partner. I've had a few customers born in the dark ages and reps that asked to speak to my boss, but the worst was a guy who snapped his fingers and told me to put the kettle on girly. Needless to say, he didn't get his cuppa, and he certainly didn't get the discount he asked for. Story 2. We wanted a fence around our house. I have always worked from home, and my husband has always worked in a field where he cannot take time to meet with contractors, etc. He and I agree on terms up front, and then I make decisions from there. It doesn't matter in life, but for this story it does. I make more than my husband. We had already agreed on this company based on various factors. A man came over to give an estimate during a work day, which ended up being less than we expected to pay. I was ready to sign the papers, and he said, "I'd rather talk to your husband about the numbers and get his signature since he will be the one paying for it." I asked him to leave my property and never come back. Story 3. When I was a baby, for some reason I wouldn't latch on when my mother breastfed me, so I wasn't eating well. The doctor completely ignored my mom and only talked to my dad because she was too hysterical. He was on the verge of finding out what that looked like. Story 4. Husband and I took my daughter to urgent care for stitches. Husband is holding the kid, and I check her in at the front desk iPad. Front desk man looks to my husband and asks for the insurance card. We're on my insurance, so I hand him the card. Next, he tells my husband the copay, looking at him, behind me, when I'm the one standing at the desk. I pull out my card with my name on it, and pay. Story 5. I took my colleague out to lunch. He wasn't a subordinate, he was at the same level. However, I was given a company card, and he wasn't, due to the nature of our jobs. When the bill came around, the waitress gave it to him because she assumed he would be paying. He graciously grabbed the bill and gave it to me and said she's the boss. Smart move, made me feel validated, and he got a free lunch. Story 6. I've been on the flip side of this. For years, I worked at bicycle shops and regularly sold some pretty expensive bikes. One day, a couple came in. The wife was interested in a bike, and it quickly became apparent that the husband was an overpowering, dominating type. She wants to do this, she doesn't want to do that, she likes this, she doesn't like that, etc. When it became clear she wasn't being allowed to do much speaking at all, I would let the husband the question, and I'd reply by physically turning and giving the answer to the wife, making eye contact with her only and pointedly ignoring the husband. It was pretty blatant. She loved it. She lit up, engaged with me, and genuinely seemed to enjoy the process of learning more about riding and getting into a new sport/hobby. Story 7. It's not so much a particular story, but when I was shopping for a car several years ago, the salesman at every dealership kept talking to my husband instead of me, even though I was the one who contacted the dealerships and made sure to introduce myself first. My husband got sick of it and started telling them, "Don't talk to me, it's not my car. Talk to her." I wound up buying from a saleswoman who treated us equally until she pretty quickly figured out my husband was not involved whatsoever in the decision. Story 8. 25 years ago, my husband and I are looking for our first house. He had just graduated and still had student debt. I had been practicing law and had $20,000 saved for the down payment. Real estate agent only spoke to husband, even if I asked the questions. In one house we went to look at the basement and the guy says, "You don't want to go there. It has spiders." I told my husband I would never buy a house from him. Later the guy ran for office and I told everyone the story, including a woman that called me randomly to promote his candidacy. Turns out she was his mother. It's a small thing but indicative of his attitude toward. Story 9. Happened to my mom when we went to look at colleges. The admissions guy opened by shaking my dad's hand, constantly directed questions at my dad, and would look to him for confirmation whenever my mom said something. My mom is de facto the money person of our family unit. She manages the family finances and investments and stuff, and was way more qualified to comment on things like student loans or expected contributions. When we left that meeting, she was absolutely furious that she had to basically fight the admissions person to have a normal conversation. Story 10. This August I bought a new truck and took my boyfriend with me. He is white and I am Mexican. We arrived at the dealership and I asked about the Explorer they had front and center. Salesman comes over and is asking a bunch of questions to my BF. He told him it's for me. I was ignored for the entire conversation. I got up and started looking at the truck. A Hispanic salesman comes and asks me if I need help. I was out of there within 1.5 hours with keys in hand. Found my BF with the other salesman. I looked at BF and said I bought the one I wanted. Manny G got me squared away. The look of utter disappointment and anger on the guy's face was worth it. My BF chuckled and said, "I told you she was the one buying. Manny, you were great." Story 11. At work, I manage a few facility systems in our building, think air handlers, water purification, etc. I was meeting a new vendor, let's call him Pat, that was servicing one of the systems I was overseeing. Pat had already met the facilities engineer, also a man, so this coworker was introducing me to him. Instead of talking directly to me, Pat turned to my coworker after shaking my hand and asked him, "And what does she do here?" A few weeks later, he had the unpleasant opportunity to learn that I'm the one who calls him when his company falls through and doesn't deliver. Needless to say, I was not overly polite about it when Pat failed to do his job. Story 12. We were looking into replacing our roof and found a metal roof company who was running a promotion, so I gave them a call and scheduled for someone to come out and give us a quote. I was able to answer all of his questions, but he refused to give me a quote without my husband present, with some sign before we leave for best price excuse, and was intent on driving back over the following day, when my husband would be home. I called their main office shortly after he left and said I wasn't interested in any high-pressure sales tactics, I just wanted a quote, and if they wouldn't give that to me, the one who would be paying for it, then to not bother coming back out. Didn't see them again. The 3 other roofing companies I contacted had no problem dealing solely with me. Story 13. Not a client per se, but a relevant story. I caught some hunters trespassing on my property. I wasn't rude to them at all, just waved from the other side of the field. The next day they show up at my house and one gestures towards the police car in the driveway and asks to speak to my husband about hunting in our woods. I was like, "You can talk to him if you want, but that's my cruiser and this is my land, not his." They still insisted on getting permission from my husband. Story 14. I was buying a new sports car. My husband and I walk into the dealership and the sales guy walks up holding his hand out to shake my husband's hand and asks how he can help. Fine. No biggie. My husband says she's buying, not me. Sales guy glances at me and says to my husband, "Well, it's not just her decision, right?" We left and I bought my new sports car elsewhere. Story 15. Was invited to a weekend away with a supplier to launch their new range. My husband went with, and on the order day the financial manager of the supplier came up to my husband and asked him what he thought about the new range and what he is considering to buy. My husband replied very dryly that he is only the +1 and that he must speak to me, seeing that I am the one with the checkbook. Influencers are a big factor in causing this problem, and it's not even so much the consumerism that's troubling, it's the comments and the enthusiasm of viewers that says their dream or goal in life is to be that way. Women of Reddit, what's your nice guy story? Story 1. Met this guy online through one of my friends. He seemed pretty nice, so I would text him periodically throughout the day, and he wanted to video chat once, so we did. He became obsessed with me and wanted to call every night before he went to bed. He told me I would be the perfect wife and that we should have 3 kids. He wanted to move me out to the cattle ranch he owned and operated so we could get married and start a family. We had been talking for maybe 2 weeks. I was looking for a job to get through college and jokingly shared a "now hiring dancers" sign at the local strip club on Snapchat. He went ballistic and told me he couldn't be with a girl who had no respect for herself. We weren't even dating, but he broke up with me on my birthday. Story 2. I'm sure I've told this story before on a different account, but I once was out with friends and my drink was spiked. One dude stayed with me to take care of me, and my other friends left because we all knew him. Turns out he spiked my drink himself so he could save me and show me how caring he was. Story 3. A guy, we're childhood friends, took me out for touristy stuff, and all 'cause it was my first time in New York. He insisted on paying for everything that day, and when it got late, dropped me all the way to the other side of the city so that I'd return safely to my cousin's place. He just does small nice things pretty much all the time, and it just makes me glad to have known someone like him. Story 4. When I was in 6th grade, I hung out with this group of kids in our apartment complex, most of them much older than I was. Chad was 16 with braces, acne, horrid teeth. He would separate me from the group and corner me for a kiss all the time, telling me I owed him because his mom had me over for dinner since she knew I was a latchkey kid. We take care of you, don't we? Take care of me. Gross, I never did it. Sometimes we would have fun playing basketball or going swimming. If the other kids in the group wandered off, I'd come up from the water and his D would be out. He'd be grinning wildly at me and shaking it, and as I ran away slipping on the wet tiles, he shouted crazy crap about how I can't come over for dinner anymore. Story 5. He insisted on paying for everything that day, and when it got late, dropped me all the way to the other side of the city so that I'd return safely to my cousin's place. He just does small nice things pretty much all the time, and it just makes me glad to have known someone like him. Story 4. When I was in 6th grade, I hung out with this group of kids in our apartment complex, most of them much older than I was. Chad was 16 with braces, acne, horrid teeth. He would separate me from the group and corner me for a kiss all the time, telling me I owed him because his mom had me over for dinner since she knew I was a latchkey kid. We take care of you, don't we? Take care of me. Gross, I never did it. Sometimes we would have fun playing basketball or going swimming. If the other kids in the group wandered off, I'd come up from the water and his D would be out. He'd be grinning wildly at me and shaking it, and as I ran away slipping on the wet tiles, he shouted crazy crap about how I can't come over for dinner anymore. Story 5. We were friends since high school, and after his first girlfriend broke up with him in university, he went a year or so without making love and then started occasionally needling me to see if I would sleep with him, even though I shut that crap down with the brutal force of 1,000 flaming numbers. Then he'd stop for a few weeks and then try to work it into conversation like, "Are you sure? We don't really talk anymore." I stopped engaging in his efforts to start conversations, to be honest. Story 8. My best friend got with the nicest of nice guys. He was super sweet and friendly, treated her well, bought her little gifts and flowers, always put up with us girls chatting crap, bought us the odd round and made sure everyone got taxis home. Genuine nice guy. He also always matched his socks to his shirt, which I thought was fantastic. Needless to say, my best friend declared him the most boring man ever, and she hated his matching socks and impeccably ironed shirt. I was so disappointed. I thought he was great. I like to think he went on to marry a girl who always managed to wear matching underwear, and they know how two beautifully turned out matching children. Story 9. Met a guy while working an internship. We hit it off at first. He seemed nice at first, but he got awful when we hung out. I told him when he got to my house I wasn't going to have sex with him, so he spent the entire time basically sexually harassing me. He also got mean when I tried to call him out on it, giving me the silent treatment or making mean and sarcastic comments about what I said. Story 10. Went out one time with this weird hipster I met on the bus home from college. He kept forcing me to kiss him on the first date and then asked me for a blowjob. Wouldn't stop talking either. And instead of letting me sit down in the coffee shop and enjoy my coffee, he took my power and control firsthand because he wanted to walk around town while talking. Story 11. I think I might be a nice guy. Made an inappropriate joke to begin our 5th date. Yet we spent the next 5 hours eating, walking, kissing, and talking through Manhattan. We stopped to get something to drink and I again said something else cringeworthy while tipsy. I kept kissing her hand as we walked to the subway. She rightfully ended things 2 days. I didn't say anything disparaging towards her or women, but I feel like ass for making her feel uncomfortable while I was drinking. She didn't deserve that. I actually got a shout out in the leadership meeting of all the bigwigs for that. So yeah, a very satisfying job with lots of appreciation. Story 12. I dated my nice guy best friend in undergrad who swore he was different from other guys after being there for me after a couple of failed relationships. I ended up breaking up with him and getting a restraining order after he threatened to shoot me. Not saying you shouldn't give people a chance, but you should always stay wary. Story 13. Let's see, I've posted already, but there are so many. There was the guy who confessed his love for me when I had repeatedly explained to him that I was not at all interested. He then got very upset with me because what was he supposed to do now since he'd already told his fiancée about me and she dumped his ass? Then he started ranting about how much he hates Mexican girls because we give white guys no play. There was the guy I went on 2 dates with that showed up, uninvited, to my birthday party with a ring and like 5 dozen roses and started ordering my friends around to bring him beers. When I would not accept the ring, he jumped in his comically high truck. There was a slight struggle and peeled out. I ran into him months later and he let me know that he was doing okay, despite what I had put him through. Thank God, Manny, thank God. Story 14. My fiancé is from a Latin area where kissing a person on the cheek is a normal greeting. In college, he was unconsciously greeting girls this way, but worked to wean himself out of doing it because he wanted to be more respectful to U.S. culture. Meanwhile, another guy, Hispanic ethnicity but born and raised in NJ, was doing the kiss on the cheek greeting, and he always attempted to get the girls to mistakenly kiss him on the lips. Sometimes he would even say, no, it's supposed to be on the lips. Total creep, and it's disturbing how long he was able to keep up the routine. Story 15. A guy I've known for years. We've hung out a few times, but mostly kept our friendship going through texts, calls, and online. No big deal. I've never led him on. He made intentions when we first met that he wanted something more, but I wasn't attracted to him, superficial reasons, but we all got preferences, so I rejected him as nicely as I could. He took it well and we remained friends. Fast forward to years later, I'm noticing his FB posts are increasingly cringy. Like, I'm such a nice guy, why can't I get a girlfriend, blah blah blah, complain. He texts me saying that he wants to take me out for drinks. I say sure, but as friends. Even suggested getting a group together. Never got a response back. He completely ghosted me. Blocked me on social media, etc. Maybe a nice guy, but he sure is a 30 years old man-child.